Commander Jake Morrison had been watching the stars through the massive windows of Luna Base when the emergency alert started blinking red across every screen in the communications center. He rushed over to the main console, his coffee still steaming in his hand. What he saw made his blood run cold. The hologram that appeared was Ambassador Keth from the Zephyrian Republic. Jake had met Keth many times before, during peaceful trade negotiations. The Zephyrians were good people, tall, blue-skinned beings who valued art and science above all else. They had never hurt anyone, but now, Keth looked completely different. His usually bright blue skin had turned pale, almost gray. His large eyes, which normally sparkled with curiosity, were filled with pure terror. Commander Morrison, Keth's voice was shaking so badly that the transmission kept cutting in and out. Our worlds are burning. Everything we built, everyone we love, it's all being destroyed. Jake leaned forward, gripping the edge of the console. Keth, what happened? Who's attacking you? The Void Dominion, Keth whispered, and even saying the name seemed to frighten him more. They came without warning. No demands, no negotiations. They just started killing. Commander, they've already wiped out 12 of our colonies. Millions of my people are dead. The door to the communications center slid open, and Admiral Diana Torres walked in. She was the head of Luna Base's defense operations, a tough woman who had served in the military for over 30 years. Jake had never seen her look worried about anything, but when she heard Keth's words, her face went completely white. How long do you have? Diana asked, stepping up to the console. Keth's image flickered as another explosion lit up the sky behind him. 3 weeks, maybe less if we're unlucky. Our entire defense fleet fought them at the Meridian system. We lost everything. Every ship, every brave soul who tried to protect us. His voice broke completely. The Galactic Council knows what's happening. We begged them for help. Do you know what they told us? Jake felt his hands forming fists. What did they say? They said we're expendable losses in the greater galactic balance. They won't risk their precious ships to save a small republic like ours. Keth looked directly at Jake through the hologram. Humanity is our only hope now. Please, Commander, we know you've been hiding your true strength. Everyone talks about it in whispers. The human ships that appear and disappear without explanation. The training exercises that seemed too advanced for a young species. Jake and Diana looked at each other. This was the moment they had all been dreading and preparing for. For 50 long years, humanity had been playing a careful game. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were just newcomers, a young species that had barely figured out space travel. Earth's leaders had decided long ago to keep their real military power hidden, while other species showed off their weapons and bragged about their fleets. Humans had been quietly building something much more dangerous. The truth was that human military technology had advanced far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Earth had secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. They had weapons that could destroy entire fleets without being detected. Most importantly, they had something no other species possessed. The willingness to fight dirty when protecting innocent lives. Keth, Jake said slowly, we'll contact you within 24 hours with our answer. Thank you, Commander. My people won't forget this kindness, no matter what you decide. The hologram flickered and disappeared. The communication center fell completely silent, except for the quiet humming of computers. Diana walked over to the main tactical display and stared at it for a long moment. 50 years of hiding, she said quietly. 50 years of letting them think we're just peaceful traders with a few basic ships. Jake nodded. And now we have to decide if we're ready to show them what humans really are. Diana turned around, and Jake could see the fire in her eyes. Those Zephyrians saved my nephew's life when his transport broke down in their space. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't want anything in return. They just helped because it was the right thing to do. I know, Jake replied. And now they need us. The secret that humanity had protected for decades was about to be revealed. The galaxy was going to learn that the quiet, peaceful humans were actually the most dangerous warriors they had ever encountered. General Robert Hayes had been standing in the massive council chamber for over 3 hours, and his patience was completely gone. The Galactic Council Station was supposedly the most important place in the galaxy, where all the major decisions were made. But right now, it felt more like a circus, where nobody cared about doing the right thing. The chamber itself was enormous, built to hold representatives from dozens of different alien species. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking trees, and a few were just floating balls of energy. But despite all their different appearances, they all had one thing in common. They were all acting like cowards. Robert had come here with a simple request. The Zephyrians were being slaughtered by the Void Dominion, and they needed help. It should have been an easy decision for anyone with a conscience. But these council members were treating it like some minor paperwork issue. Counselor Vex was the worst of them all. He looked like a giant octopus wearing fancy robes, and his tentacles kept waving around as he spoke. The Zephyrian situation is certainly regrettable, he said in a bored voice, like he was discussing the weather. But we must consider the bigger picture here. The Void Dominion controls over 1,000 worlds. They have massive fleets and unlimited resources. We simply cannot risk starting a galactic war over one small republic. Robert felt his hands shaking with anger. You're talking about genocide here. Millions of innocent people are going to die, and you're worried about your own comfort. The entire chamber suddenly filled with what sounded like laughter, though it came from creatures that didn't even have mouths. Some made clicking sounds, others buzzed like insects, and a few just flashed different colors. But Robert could tell. They were all laughing at him. Counselor Thane was the loudest. He was a massive reptilian creature, at least 12 feet tall, with scales that looked like armor and teeth like daggers. When he leaned forward, his yellow eyes stared down at Robert with complete contempt. Humans, he said, shaking his enormous head, always so emotional about everything. You've been traveling in space for what, barely a century. You're like children playing with toy rockets. Thane stood up to his full height, making Robert feel tiny in comparison. The Void Dominion has been conquering worlds since before your species discovered fire. They have battleships the size of your cities. They have weapons that can crack planets in half. And you think your little patrol boats can make a difference? More laughter filled the chamber. Robert could see other council members whispering to each other and pointing at the human delegation like they were some kind of joke. Ambassador Lisa Park, who had been sitting quietly in the human section, suddenly stood up. She was a diplomat who usually preferred talking to fighting, but even she looked furious now. We formally demand that this council authorize immediate military intervention to protect the Zephyrian Republic, she announced in a clear, strong voice. The laughter stopped immediately. Counselor Vex's tentacles stopped moving, and his voice turned ice cold. Your demand is denied, humans. And let me make something very clear to you. If your species takes any military action without our permission, we will immediately expel humanity from this council. You will lose all your trading rights, all your diplomatic privileges, everything. Vex leaned forward, his alien eyes glowing with threat. You are junior members here, the newest and weakest species in this chamber. Start acting like it, or you'll find yourselves completely alone in this galaxy. Robert felt his jaw muscles tighten so hard it hurt. These arrogant aliens had no idea what they had just done. For 50 years, humanity had played nice, pretending to be weak and harmless. They had followed all the rules, respected all the treaties, and acted like grateful newcomers who were lucky to be included. But now, the council had crossed a line that should never be crossed. They were willing to let millions of innocent people die just to avoid making their own lives uncomfortable. Worse than that, They were threatening humanity for even suggesting that genocide was wrong. As the human delegation gathered their things and prepared to leave the chamber, Lisa leaned close to Robert and whispered something that made his heart race. "Send the message to Earth immediately. Use the full authorization codes." Robert nodded and activated his secure communicator. The message he sent was short, but would change everything. Council refuses intervention. Threats made against humanity. Operation Prometheus is authorized. Repeat, Operation Prometheus is authorized. As they walked out of the chamber, Robert could hear the alien council members already moving on to their next topic. Like the genocide they had just ignored was already forgotten, but they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They were about to learn that humanity had been hiding their true strength for a very good reason, and now that reason was gone. President Michael Carter had been walking through the underground tunnels for almost 10 minutes, and he still couldn't believe how massive this place was. The facility was buried so deep beneath the Colorado mountains that even the most advanced alien scanners couldn't detect it. For 50 years, this had been humanity's best-kept secret. The main command center was like something out of a science fiction movie, except it was completely real. The room was enormous, with curved walls covered in displays showing star maps, ship movements, and weapon specifications. But what made Michael's heart race was what those displays were actually showing: the true extent of human military power. Fleet. Admiral David Kim walked up to the main tactical display, which was easily 20 feet wide, with a few touches on his control pad. The display came alive with thousands of glowing dots representing ships, bases, and weapons scattered across the galaxy. Operation Prometheus is officially authorized, Kim announced to the room full of military leaders. For the past 50 years, we've been playing the galaxy's greatest magic trick. While everyone thought we were just building a few basic patrol ships, we were actually creating this. The display zoomed out to show the full picture, and even Michael, who had authorized most of these projects, felt his breath catch. There were hundreds of stealth ships that could appear and disappear without a trace. Massive orbital defense platforms hidden in asteroid fields. Weapon systems so advanced that they made alien technology look like Stone Age tools. General Maria Rodriguez stepped forward, pointing to different sections of the display. She was the head of strategic planning, a brilliant woman who had spent decades studying how other species fought wars. "Our psychological warfare division has been busy," she said with a grin. "We've studied every known alien species in the galaxy. We know how they think, how they fight, what scares them." She pulled up tactical information about the Void Dominion. "These guys are typical alien military thinking. They believe in big fleets, direct confrontation, overwhelming firepower. They line up their ships, point them at the enemy, and start shooting. It's like watching two armies from ancient times just charging at each other." Michael nodded, understanding where this was going. "And they have no idea about human warfare tactics." "Exactly," Maria replied. "They've never encountered guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run tactics, or psychological operations. When humans fight, we don't just try to destroy the enemy's ships. We get inside their heads and make them defeat themselves." Colonel Tom Bradley, who ran the intelligence division, suddenly spoke up from his workstation. "Sir, I'm getting confirmation from our deep space monitors. The Void Dominion has moved their entire main fleet to Zephyrian space. Over 3,000 ships, including their command vessels." Michael felt a cold smile cross his face. "They're not expecting any resistance at all, are they?" "None whatsoever," Bradley confirmed. "Our intelligence shows they're treating this like a simple cleanup operation. They think they're just finishing off a defenseless species." That was exactly what Michael had hoped to hear. The Void Dominion had made the classic mistake of every bully in history. They assumed their victims would always be helpless. Fleet Admiral Kim activated another section of the tactical display. Phase 1 begins in exactly 6 hours. Ghost. Fleet Alpha will initiate harassment operations across 12 different systems. The Dominion is about to discover something that no predator species has ever had to face before. What's that? Michael asked, though he already knew the answer. They're about to learn why even the deadliest predator should be afraid of humans. Kim replied. Admiral Jennifer Walsh, who commanded the stealth operations, stepped up to join the group. She had been quiet until now, but there was something dangerous in her eyes. The Galactic Council thinks we're primitive, and the Void Dominion thinks we're helpless. Perfect. Let's show them exactly what primitive human warfare looks like. Michael looked around the room at all the military leaders who had been preparing for this moment their entire careers. These were people who understood that sometimes you had to fight not for territory or resources, but for something much more important. The principle that innocent people should be protected. The Void Dominion has never faced an enemy like us, Michael said to the assembled group. They've conquered species that fight for survival. They've defeated armies that fight for their governments, but they've never encountered humans who fight for complete strangers just because it's the right thing to do. He turned back to the massive display showing all of humanity's hidden military power. They think they know what we're capable of because they've seen our patrol ships and diplomatic vessels. They have no idea that we've been holding back our real strength for 50 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Kim nodded grimly. That moment has arrived. In 6 hours, the galaxy is going to learn that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our ships. It's the fact that we never abandon people who need our help. The countdown had begun. Operation Prometheus was about to show the universe what humans were really made of. Captain Mark Thompson pressed his face against the viewing port of his ship's bridge, watching something that should have been impossible. In the distance, massive Void Dominion battleships were exploding one after another, their hulls cracking open like eggs and spilling fire into space. The beautiful part was that the enemy had absolutely no idea what was hitting them, his ship. The Defiance was completely invisible to their scanners. Human stealth technology was 50 years ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen, while other species had been bragging about their big, flashy warships. Humans had been quietly perfecting the art of fighting without being seen. Captain, his communications officer called out, "We're getting reports from across the battle zone." The voice of Commander Ashley Davis crackled through the speakers from somewhere deep in enemy territory. Ghost Squadron reporting successful strikes on supply lines. We've hit 12 different convoy routes in the past 4 hours. Enemy logistics are completely falling apart. Mark smiled grimly. While the Dominion had been focused on their big invasion fleet, human forces had been systematically destroying everything that kept that fleet running. No fuel, no ammunition, no spare parts, no food. It was like cutting the legs out from under a giant. Meanwhile, on the Dominion flagship, General Crix was having the worst day of his military career. He stood in front of his tactical displays, his 4 arms waving frantically as he tried to make sense of what was happening to his supposedly unstoppable invasion force. How were they everywhere at once? He roared at his confused staff officers. The displays showed human forces attacking from 12 different directions simultaneously. Ships that appeared on scanners, fired devastating shots, then vanished completely. Ground forces that struck supply depots and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Crix had conquered 47 different species in his career, and they had all fought the same way, big fleets facing off against each other, winner takes all. But these humans were fighting like ghosts, like smoke that you couldn't grab hold of. Down on the surface of Zephyria Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Steve Johnson was leading a completely different kind of operation. While his teams were engaged in fierce fighting with Dominion ground forces, their primary mission wasn't to destroy the enemy, it was to save every Zephyrian civilian they could find. "Move those families to the evacuation zone," he shouted to his soldiers while explosions lit up the sky around them. His teams had been working for 3 days straight, using underground tunnels, and abandoned buildings to get innocent people to safety. Between rescue operations, they were also planting some very unpleasant surprises for the advancing Dominion troops. These aliens fight like they're marching in a parade. Steve muttered to Sergeant Lisa Wilson as they watched enemy forces moving in perfect formation down a main street. No creativity, no adaptability at all. Lisa nodded, checking the remote detonator in her hand. They have no idea we've been mining every route they're using. The Dominion had never encountered an enemy that used deception, fake retreats, and psychological warfare. Human forces would appear weak and vulnerable, drawing enemy ships into perfect ambush positions. When the aliens finally adapted to one tactic, the humans had already moved on to 3 completely different strategies. Major General Paul Martinez was coordinating the entire operation from his command ship, watching the battle unfold across multiple star systems. His staff kept reporting successful engagements, but Paul knew the real victory wasn't being measured in enemy ships destroyed. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "Dominion forces are trying to match our ship movements. They're spreading their fleet thin, trying to cover all our attack vectors." Paul shook his head. "They still don't understand what we're really doing here. They think this is about destroying their fleet and winning some kind of military victory. They don't realize we're not trying to beat them in a traditional battle. We're trying to save every single Zephyrian life we can." That was the key difference that the Dominion couldn't comprehend. Every other species they had conquered fought to protect their own territory and resources. But humans were fighting for complete strangers, people they had never met, simply because those people needed help. By the end of the first week, something unprecedented was happening across the galaxy. The Void Dominion, who had never lost a battle in over 2 centuries of conquest, was in full retreat. Their supply lines were destroyed, their communication networks were compromised, and their troops were demoralized by an enemy they couldn't predict or understand. News reports were spreading across every civilized world, the unstoppable Void Dominion had been completely outmaneuvered by tactics they couldn't even comprehend. The humans, who everyone had dismissed as primitive newcomers, had just pulled off the greatest military upset in galactic history, and they had done it not through superior firepower or larger fleets, but through something no other species possessed: the willingness to fight dirty when protecting innocent lives. 3 months had passed since the first human ships had appeared in Zephyrian space, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Void Dominion, which had been terrorizing civilizations for over 200 years, was completely finished. Their leadership was now sitting in restraints aboard Admiral Kim's flagship, looking like broken prisoners instead of the mighty conquerors they used to be. President Michael Carter stood in the main conference room of the flagship, watching as the former Dominion generals were led away to face trial for their crimes. These were beings who had ordered the deaths of billions of innocent people across dozens of worlds. Now they looked small and defeated, their arrogance completely gone. The most satisfying moment came when Counselor Vex arrived for the surrender ceremony. The same alien who had laughed at humanity just months before was now approaching Carter with obvious terror in his tentacled face. His voice was shaking as he spoke. "President Carter," Vex said, his tentacles quivering nervously, "we had absolutely no idea of humanity's true capabilities. Perhaps we were somewhat hasty in our previous judgment of your species." Carter's expression didn't change at all. His face remained as cold as stone as he stared down the alien politician who had been willing to let millions die. "You were ready to let an entire species be wiped out because helping them would have been inconvenient for you. That kind of cowardice ends right now." Vex tried to stammer out some kind of response, but Carter had already turned away. There was nothing more to say to someone who had shown such complete disregard for innocent life. Meanwhile, General Robert Hayes was standing in another part of the ship with the newly freed leaders of the Zephyrian Republic. Ambassador Keth, who had made that desperate plea for help months ago, was now signing mutual defense agreements with dozens of species who had been inspired by humanity's actions. "Let me make this crystal clear to everyone listening," Hayes announced to the crowd of reporters from across the galaxy. "Any species that deliberately targets civilians will face the full military response of the Human Defense Coalition. We're not interested in conquest or territory, but we will not stand by while innocent people are slaughtered." The reporters were broadcasting his words to every corner of known space. Within hours, every civilization in the galaxy would understand the new reality. Humanity was now the protector of the weak and defenseless. Captain Mark Thompson, who had commanded the stealth destroyer during the opening battles, was now wearing the uniform of a full admiral. He was overseeing the establishment of rapid response fleets that would be positioned throughout the galaxy. These weren't invasion forces, they were rescue fleets, designed to respond instantly to any threat against civilian populations. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species that the Galactic Council had dismissed as junior members now commanded the most feared and respected military force in known space. But unlike every other major power in galactic history, humanity was using that strength to protect others instead of conquering them. When the new Galactic Council session convened, the chamber looked very different than it had before. Many of the arrogant species who had laughed at humanity were now sitting quietly, clearly afraid to draw attention to themselves. Ambassador Lisa Park stood at the podium, where human representatives had once been dismissed and ignored. "I want everyone in this chamber to understand something very important," Lisa announced to the assembled delegates. "Humanity didn't reveal our true strength because we wanted to conquer anyone. We revealed it because we refused to let innocent people suffer when we have the power to help them." Her voice carried clearly through the chamber as she continued, "But make absolutely no mistake about this. Any future attempt at genocide, any deliberate targeting of civilians, any species that thinks they can prey on the weak, will be met with overwhelming force. This is not a threat. This is a promise." As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, former Councillor Thane was heard whispering urgently to his aide. The massive reptilian, who had once mocked humanity as emotional children, now sounded genuinely frightened. "Never again," he was saying, shaking his enormous head. "Never again underestimate a species that values the lives of complete strangers more than they value their own secrets." That whispered comment spread throughout the galaxy faster than any official announcement. It perfectly captured what made humanity different from every other species in known space. While others fought for territory, resources, or power, humans had revealed their greatest military secrets simply to save people they had never met. The war was over, but the galaxy had learned something that would never be forgotten. Humanity's most powerful weapon wasn't their advanced technology, their stealth ships, or their brilliant tactics. Their greatest strength was something that couldn't be built in a factory or programmed into a computer. It was their absolute refusal to abandon anyone who needed their help. The age of bullies and predators preying on the weak was finished. Humanity was watching now, and they would never look away.